All right, what's up, everybody? So, had a really good question from a guy who was in a class with me a couple months ago. Really good shooter, like he can hit stuff. He's really fast. He has a good index. But his question was one that I think would help a ton of people out because this is probably happening with a lot of people. Like, if it can happen with him, like being a really good shooter, it can definitely happen with a lot of people. And this is something that I see all the time. So, his question was this essentially, like, hey, when I'm inside of 15 yards, I can be in straight shred mode, like I'm hitting alphas and the time is good. But as soon as I get 25 yards and beyond, everything becomes really, really hard. Sometimes the hits are there, sometimes they're not, in a nutshell. Now, there's only a couple things that this possibly could be. And I think that, in terms of not hitting the target, there's only a couple reasons that this could be. And I think that this is really important to understand because a problem understood is a problem halfway solved. And so, I think, first thing, like, you have to understand actually what is happening and why. Then we can talk about how to fix it. So I think what happens is a couple things. So first thing being, like, you put the dot on the target, like you're aiming at it, and then when you press the trigger, it's like right before you press the trigger, the dot is on the spot, and then you do something like that and move the dot off of the spot, and then you walk down and look, and you're like, damn, the hit is not there, not where the dot was when I pressed the trigger, or at least that's how you perceive it. And so, with that, one thing that you can do is a drill called trigger control at speed, just to try to become aware of this. It's a dry fire drill. Set up your shot timer, set up your shot timer on delay, have your finger somewhere inside the trigger guard, but not like touching or prepped or anything like that. On the beep, you're just gonna react to the beep and smash straight through the trigger before the end of the beep. And the idea is to figure out how to isolate just the trigger finger and not move the gun as you press the trigger. Kind of very, very simple drill, yet really hard to do if you're doing it correctly. And I say doing it correctly because if you, set up your shot timer and you hear beep and then you wait and then you prep and slowly press, it's like, duh, dummy, of course the gun isn't gonna move when you do that. You are trying to aggressively press the trigger. And what I tell guys is like, hey, press the trigger before the end of the beep. And typically what you see is something like this. And it's like, well, Nick, that's really bad. It's like, yes, that is. However, you are now replicating what you see and feel in your live fire. Now we're in dry fire where we can start applying cause and effect and start changing these behaviors. And so the answer is like, isolate just the trigger finger. And this is something that everyone can work on because it's dry fire, it's free, right? Like, learn how to smash the trigger without moving the gun. And I'm not even saying that we would always press the trigger like that, right? But as a training strategy, learning how to smash like straight through the trigger without moving the gun, like really, really good. If I can do that, chances are I can do something like, if I need to, prep the trigger, take the slack out, and then press it carefully without moving the gun. But if all I ever practice is like prep and then slowly press, it will be very difficult for me to learn how to not move the gun around as I smash through the trigger. So I think learn how to smash through the trigger without moving the gun around. And again, what you should be looking for in your dry fire is the exact same thing that you see and feel in your live fire. So you should try to replicate that. Oftentimes, guys will say, and you see this all the time and hear it all the time, like, oh, I can do, as an example, like I can do El Pres in 4 seconds in my dry fire, but it's 9 seconds live fire. It's like, that's a guy that is not replicating what's happening in their live fire in his dry fire, right? And he's not applying cause and effect. He's doing things differently in his dry fire than he is in his live fire. So I say all that to say, do exactly what you see and feel in your live fire. That's the beauty of dry fire. Like, there's no bullets there to kind of add to the noise of it. And you'll be able to see more and be able to, try to like isolate more or less like, hey, what is actually happening? It'll give you a better understanding of what's happening. Therefore, you can fix it. So I would say that is a really good drill. However, I think the root cause of this is people staring at the dot. And I get, like, some people might disagree with this, but I think what happens is As soon as people start to perceive the target being really hard to hit, whether it's far away or whether it's a partial, you're like, oh my gosh, you look at it and you're like, man, that gives me anxiety. I don't like it at all. And then what they'll do is they'll become really dot focused, and you'll even see them like sometimes they'll like dip their head down and like really start like honing in on the dot. And what happens is when you hone in on the dot, especially on a far target, like it becomes really difficult to hold the dot over the spot, and you'll perceive the dot to be moving around way more. Now I'm being really demonstrative so you guys can see this, but like they'll do something like this. They'll hone in on the dot, and then they'll try to time the shot as it goes by the spot, or time the dot as it goes by the spot, and they'll do something like this. And now, and then they'll press on the gun. And it's like that stemmed from a visual issue. I get it. You're pressing the trigger with your entire hand. However, it's stemming from a visual issue. And so like both of those things need to be corrected. And the thing that is going to make it way easier is to start doing things like target focus. Now you might think like, how the hell do I know if I'm target focused? I'm glad you asked, Alan. A really good way to figure out what it should look like and what it shouldn't look like, and I think this is really good. Like you should understand what bad looks like as well as good. And this is something that traditionally in training, you go to a class, like you get shown what does good look like. And that's great. Like we should be showing people what good looks like. However, showing people what bad looks like as well, I think can be very, very informative. This way, when they see it, it's like, yup, that's not good. Or when they feel it, yup, that's not good. And this is what is happening. So understand what bad looks like. So one good way to do this, like put up a target, put up a, you could take like a Sharpie or like something, small on the, like a USPSA target. Kind of like this one. I've got this one all colored up because it's a hardcover target, but take a, like a black Sharpie, put a little mark in the center of the target, right? Put it at like 10, 12 yards away in your house, or 10, 12 feet away in your house. Stare at the dot, bring the dot up on the target and try to hold it over the small spot while you stare at the dot. You might be saying, why are you staring at the dot? Exactly. So you can figure out what bad looks like. And what you'll notice is like, as soon as you stare at the dot, you'll see like this, all of this wobble shit that starts to happen. It becomes really, really hard to hold the dot over that spot. This is probably what this guy and the vast majority of people do on targets that they perceive to be really hard, okay? Next, what you can do is just look at the spot, bring the gun up. Look at the spot, bring the gun up. And what you'll notice is the more you hone in on the spot and the more you get your vision out in front of the gun, the easier it is to hold the gun on the place that you're trying to hit. And then there's no more of like this whole like, and now like timing issue happening when you're shooting. And then you could start looking at appropriate levels of confirmation, etc. That's probably a topic for a completely different video, but I think, this is how we should be looking at the targets. And this is, this is what is going to help us aim the gun properly and help us press the trigger without moving the gun around. Again, yes, you do have to work on both of these things. Like you have to figure out how to look at the spot on the target, know what good and bad looks like, and know how to isolate the trigger finger from the rest of the fingers as you pull the trigger. That's what I got on that topic. Hopefully this helps you guys out. If you've got any questions, please drop them in the comment box below.